Hi class. This is going to be your video that does coverage of page 50 through 58 in your grammar book. You started on pronouns today in class with Miss Hayes, and so we're going to finish up this the coverage of it here on the video. I'm going to try to hold it to 20 minutes. I'll do my best to do that, but I will be watching the timer. So that's my goal. So let's get started. So on page 50, you've already got your introduction to pronouns. Like we said, we did that in class. So now we're going to talk about using personal pronouns. And here we're looking at 3 different ways personal pronouns can be used. And that's in the subjective case, the objective case, and the possessive case. Subjective pronouns function as subjects in the sentence. So it's going to be either the subject or it can be a predicate nominative. And even though the predicate nominative happens in the last part of the sentence and it's not functioning as a subject, because it renames the subject, sorry, let me turn this down. So because it renames the subject, it acts in the same way. So those are subjective case. Objective case are pronouns that are used as objects. That makes sense with its name. And so that would be direct objects, indirect objects, and objects of the preposition. And so that would be, if you look at the examples there, David visited me in Salt Lake City. Me is objective. It's an object. It's receiving action. It's on the other side of the action, not the subject. And then finally, the possessive case is when a pronoun shows ownership. For example, the word my coat or your idea, those are the examples in the book. Those pronouns show that something belongs to someone in the sentence, and they usually function as an adjective because they modify the noun. But so those are your 3 basics: subjective, objective, and possessive. So let's look over at the exercise on page 51. We're going to start with number 1. And what you have to do is underline the correct pronoun. So the sentence says, in history class, either we or us studied Peter Salem and Crispus Attucks. So you're trying to figure out which pronoun would be the correct one. In history class, we studied, or in history class, us studied. And so you can kind of hear which one that should be. If you said in history class, us studied, it just doesn't sound right to you. And that's because this pronoun is coming before the verb, it's functioning as a subject, and so it needs to be we. We studied. So let's skip to number 3. America attacked the British soldiers and fought, they or them, bravely. Here we're looking at the pronoun in the predicate part of the sentence, and so it's going to be objective. So we have to choose the objective pronoun, and you can hear it. If we read it incorrectly, it says America attacked the British soldiers and fought they. You can hear that doesn't sound right. So they attacked them and fought them. That's what works. So you have to look at how the pronoun is interacting within all the other words in the sentence. Is it in the subject part of the sentence? It's going to be subjective. If it's in the predicate part of the sentence, it's most likely going to be objective, unless it's a predicate noun. If it's a predicate noun or a predicate nominative, then it's always functions in the subjective case because it's renaming that noun. Okay, you're going to do the evens on this, and I'm going to remind you, be sure you check your homework. I'm not checking homework because we just don't have time for me to do that in class, so it is your job when you finish your homework to check it and make sure it's right. And remember, one of the things that I hope will convince you that you should always do that is you never know when I'm going to give a pop book quiz. And you want to make sure when I do those that you get 100, because that's an easy 100 for a quiz grade. All you have to do is check your homework and correct it. Okay, let's look here on page 52. You'll see that you continue to do the same thing. They're just adding that you put in the blank what function that the pronoun is occupying in the sentence. So this is just using some of the skills we've already been practicing. The noun is what the main person in the sentence. The verb is the main action. And then you ask that question after the verb, you say what. And if there's an answer, it's a direct object. And if you say to whom, and there's an answer, it's an indirect object. And then we've also talked about how it's good to set aside your prepositional phrases, because that way it gets them out of the other parts of the sentence. And in this case, we're looking for the object of the preposition. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that, because sometimes pronouns act in that way. So let's look at number 1 on exercise 3.6. It says, people with faith during great danger amaze either I or me. Now, I know you can probably hear what it should be. It should be they amaze me, but I know that that's right because me is an adjective pronoun and me is taking place in this sentence in the predicate, and it's actually a direct object. So you have people with faith during great danger amaze me. The subject's people. Amaze is the verb, and if we say amaze what, the answer is me. So me is the direct object. Let's look at number 3. All of they or them were protesters of the Catholic Church. So here we're picking all of they were or all of them were. And I think you can probably hear what it should be. All of them were protesters of the Catholic Church, but this exercise asks you to do the second thing, and that's tell what the function of that pronoun is. So if you have been looking for prepositional phrases and pulling them out first, there are 2 in this sentence. One of those phrases is of the Catholic Church. The other prepositional phrase is all of them. So since you know that's a prepositional phrase, all of them is the object of the preposition, which is of. Okay. If you look down at the bottom of page 52, it's talking about compound constructions, and what it's saying is when you have 2 pronouns that are linked together with the word and or, then you have to try to figure out what that second pronoun should be. And so it's showing you that if it's subjective, that means it's taking place in the subject part of the sentence. You're going to use one of the versions of I or me. And if it's objective, it's taking place where it's receiving action. In the predicate part of the sentence, it's going to be using me instead of I. So probably you've heard this trick. One of the ways that you can tell the difference is to leave out the first pronoun and just say the last one, and you usually can hear the correct answer. You'll hear what it should be. So if you look at the examples there, let's see, Mom made an appointment for you and it's either got to be you and I or you and me. Now, these are the ones that people get confused on because it feels like you should say I. It almost sounds like that's a good way of speaking. But the little trick of this is to leave out the first pronoun and then just add in the second one. So if I leave out the word you and I reread that sentence, Mom made an appointment for I, or Mom made an appointment for me. And you can see that I is the answer. Mom made an appointment, me. Me is the answer. Mom made an appointment for me. I'm getting confused. So, so that's what this compound constructions is talking about, is when you have 2 pronouns together. So let's look over on page 53, and we're going to look at exercise 3.7, number 1. Blake and Sonia were studying the biblical view of lying, so I read the story of Ananias and Sapphira to Blake and we have to pick either she or her. I read it to she, I read it to her. I know you can hear it. It's her. and that's the objective case. All right, number 3, the story has an important lesson for you and either I or me. And this one is harder. This is the one where people always say I because they think that it sounds like they're doing better grammar. But if you leave out the you in front of it, you don't say that other pronoun, that sentence says, the story has an important lesson for, and the one you would choose is me. And so me is the correct answer. And obviously it's an objective pronoun. It's taking place in the second half of the sentence, the predicate part, and it's receiving the action. So that's how you choose that. So that's a little trick with the leaving out of a pronoun I think you probably heard before. But just be sure you always test it that way because the I and the me cause people some trouble. Um, on page at the bottom of that page, you're going to continue looking for the correct pronoun, and you're going to be telling if what function it is, and you're going to be using subjects, predicate nouns, and sometimes I call those predicate nominatives. Those are the same thing. Indirect objects, direct objects, and objects of the preposition. So you just have to look at where that word is in the sentence and what its function is. Um, and you just kind of have to work through them carefully. And if you like diagramming, some of you are finding that you enjoy that and it helps you understand the sentences, you can try working with some diagrams of these to see if you can figure out some of this stuff. But that's 3-8. So let's move on, and then you're going to see on page 54, we're not doing 3-9. I don't think I have that in your homework assignments. So if I did, it was a mistake. We're not doing 3-9 at all. And then on page 56, you'll see that there's an introduction to appositives. But the last time I was in class, I actually already did an introduction to appositives. So just for a review, you need to read this again. And remember that appositives are always about renaming. And so an appositive is a noun or pronoun that follows another noun or pronoun and renames it. It might be a predicate nominative if it happens in the predicate, but sometimes it just happens as it's just renaming right behind it. It's a clarification. So that's what we're looking at is for words are just clarification of what the subject is. So you see in the examples there right at the top of page 55, we will be reading selections by the next poet, William Butler Yeats. We students will be taking turns reading aloud. So when we say we students, we are renaming we as students. It's the subject, but students just renames the pronoun to make it very clear as to who this is talking about. We students. So that's an appositive as an example of one. But you should go back and read this, highlight the important part, just like we have been doing through the book, which is also true for the other places where I'm just talking about it. You need to go through and read it and highlight the important parts so that it'll give you a place to study when it's time for us to take the test on this chapter. So let's look at exercise 310 on page 55. The directions are to underline the correct pronoun from the choices in the parentheses. So let's look at number 1. Our teacher read, we or us students, the story of Mary and Martha. Our teacher read we students, or our teacher read us students. And so I think even though that still it sounds kind of funny, we don't usually speak in that way, you can hear which one is wrong. The we is wrong. Our teacher read we students, but our teacher read us students sounds better. The story of Mary and Martha. So us is the correct answer. Number 3, their choices teach many lessons to either we or us students. Their choices teach many lessons to, and I think you can probably hear which one's wrong. That's easy to hear. Our choices, their choices teach many lessons to we. That just sounds wrong. So us is the correct answer. And so as you go through that, it may even help you to read these aloud, to do it out loud instead of just trying to do it on paper. You might be able to come up with more correct answers at the beginning if you do it that way. If when you're doing this section, if the word to is not in it, you can add it to help your ear to hear the correct answer. So you can try that, and you can also try leaving out the other noun that is being renamed. Like, for instance, on that first one, our teacher read, we leave out students. Our teacher read to us, because I told you you could put the word to in there to help you. Just leave out students. Our teacher read to us, and you can hear that that's right. And number 3, their choices teach many lessons too, and then just leave out the renaming students. Their choices teach many lessons to us, and sometimes that'll help you hear it better. So you're going to do that exercise. Going to keep doing the same thing on page 56. Very quickly, I want to go over the bottom of that page, archaic second person pronouns. These you don't see in pretty much unless you're reading King James or you're reading some old poetry, and that's the thou, thee, thy, thine. Those are all singular archaic pronouns. And ye, you, your, yours. Those are plural archaic second person pronouns, but these are not ones that you are going to be writing with. So it's not something you really need to concern yourself with. And up here on page 57 at the top, courtesy order is important in your writing and also in your speaking. So just remember that with courtesy order, whenever you are making a list that you're going to include yourself in, you just make sure you're last. And if you're using subjective pronouns, make sure I is the last pronoun used. If you're using objective pronouns, make sure me is the last pronoun used. So if you look here at the example, in the green box at the top, you can see it's wrong to say I and Kara will go to the store because you put your own pronoun first, I. And in courtesy, you always put yourself second. So Kara and I will, whatever is correct. Look at the second one. Between me and you. That's incorrect because you should always put the pronoun that refers to you last. So it should be between you and me. And then finally the last one, Brandon and you. And so in this case, you're not included in this list of pronouns, but if you are directly addressing someone, you, by courtesy, use their name or their pronoun first. So with Brandon and you, I'm talking to someone, so it should say you and Brandon. So those are just some courtesy things. So we're going to be looking at exercise 312, and I was just checking real quick. I don't see any practice with the archaic stuff. So we're just practicing the courtesy order here. So let's look at 312. It says underline the correct word choice from the choices in the parentheses. Have, and we have you and Maria, and then we have that same combination of choices again, you and Maria, ever visited Costa Rica. So we know we're going to be putting the word you and Maria in this sentence, and you have to decide which one's going to go first. Use your courtesy rule. Maria should come, I'm sorry, use your courtesy rule. You are directly addressing someone, you, and so that's what needs to come first. Have you and Maria, because you're directly addressing someone. I'm sorry I made that mistake, but I do not want to back this tape up and start over. So just hang with me. I'm watching my time. I see we're pretty close to 20 minutes, but I really am almost done. All right, number 3. We have I and Juan, and then we have the I and Juan combo. No, the Costa Rica was the first Latin American country to abolish slavery. So we got to pick out, if we're doing I and Juan, we're trying to pick out which one should go first. So using the courtesy rule, I am included in this one, I. I need to put the other person first, who is Juan. So the first answer should be Juan, and the second answer should be I, so that the sentence would read, Juan and I know, and then that sentence goes on. And we're going to do one more. Number 5, should, and our choices are I and Amelia. Those are what we're doing. Read about Jose Maria Figueres Ferrer. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name well. So we have the two choices of I and Amelia. So use your courtesy rule. If it includes yourself, you list it last. So in this case, Amelia should come first. Should Amelia and then I come second. Should Amelia and I read. So you're going to do the evens on that. And then on page 58, see, I told you we were almost done. On page 58, you're going to choose the correct pronoun in from the parentheses, and then you're also going to name what its function is, which is something that I know we keep doing, and that's not the fun part of grammar, but believe me, it helps you later to understand how the words are working. And whenever someone tries to help you with their writing and they start using some of these words that we're learning in grammar, you'll be able to understand what they're trying to communicate. So let's look here at the first one. It says, we or us, you're going to pick which one is correct, students are studying church history. So if you're not sure, if they both kind of sound right to you, leave out the word students and just look at the pronoun. We are studying history. Us are studying history. See, when you do that, it's so easy. You can hear how it sounds wrong when you say us are studying. So the answer is we. This occurs right at the beginning of the sentence. We have to be sure we're not being tricked about beginning of the sentence, but that it's not some kind of an inverted order. But in this case, it's not. So we is the subject. We are studying. That's who's doing the studying. So that S is what goes in that first blank. We're going to do one more, and then I'm going to let you go. Number 3, he or him was the founder of a Black Methodist denomination. So this one is pretty easy. You're just going to put the pronoun with the verb and see which one sounds right to you. He was the founder. Him was the founder. That's simple. You can hear it. But just in case you're wondering why, it's because this pronoun is, again, the subject in the sentence. He is the subject. Was is the verb. And so since it's the subject, it needs to be in subjective case, which is the word he. All right. So that's everything that I'm going to cover with you now. Remember, you're going to have a quiz on the pronoun chart that's in your book. Let's see if I can find that real quick, and so I can remind you what page it's on. You also got one in class today, I think. I think Miss Hayes gave you one. It's similar to this, but with different colors. And so this is just a very simple pronoun chart. And the way I'm going to give you your quiz in class next week is I'm going to start you out with your book closed, and I want you to fill in all the blanks that you can on that quiz sheet with subjective, objective, and possessive, and first person, second person, and third person, singular and plural. So fill in everything you can. And then after about 10 minutes or so, less if that's all you need, I'm going to let you open your book for maybe a minute or two, not long. And then you can fix any mistakes that you've made or fill in the blanks of things that you couldn't remember. But having the book to open up right at the end for just a real short period of time, I think will maybe give you a little confidence and not worry that you won't do well. So study it. The more you can put down correctly at the beginning will save you time, so that you can save that minute I'm going to let you look in your book for the ones that you really need some help on. And also next week is the Romeo and Juliet quiz on Act 2. Can't believe we're already in Act 2. We're getting close to halfway through the play. So be sure that you are studying all of your sheets that I've been giving you. And we will go over the last 2 scenes, 5 and 6, in class before I give you the quiz. And if you have questions, I'll answer questions, and then we'll take the quiz. But as long as you're doing your reading and you're answering all your questions, you should be okay because everybody made a really good grade on the last Romeo and Juliet. So I'm really expecting to see that on the next one. So we're finished here right at 25 minutes. So I did pretty good. I told you I'd try to do between 20 and 30, and here we are. So enjoy your weekend, and I will see you next Thursday.